She doesn't chase you because she forgot you. She chases you because somewhere deep in her mind, she begins to understand the true weight of what she lost. Every laugh she ignored, every glance she dismissed, every moment she took for granted, they echo in her thoughts like distant footsteps she cannot follow, and it is silent. Not a single text is needed. Not a single attempt to regain her attention is required from your side. Her mind is already working. Your absence is not emptiness. It is presence redefined. It is the invisible force that exposes what she failed to value. Most men panic when she withdraws. They scramble, they overcompensate, they argue, they beg. They fill the gaps they created with insecurity, drowning her in noise, hoping to patch over the mistakes they made when she mattered most. And women, they feel it instantly. They sense the chaos, the neediness, the desperation. It is tangible, it is visible, and it repels. Contrast that with you. Calm, unshaken, grounded. Your composure is invisible yet undeniable. It is the quiet gravity she cannot measure, the standard she cannot escape, the weight she cannot name. And it is in that gravity that regret begins its silent work. Her brain is wired to notice absence and reevaluate lost rewards. The male who overreacts, who chases, who tries to buy attention, triggers nothing but fatigue. But you step back. You withdraw your energy without drama. You do nothing overt. And suddenly her mind begins to replay every interaction, every nuance of your presence. Every moment of patience, every carefully measured smile, every boundary silently enforced. It becomes a lens through which she judges herself. The laughter she dismissed now resonates in her memory. Your voice is not just words, it is cadence, rhythm, presence. And she begins to realize, often unconsciously, that the man she let go was not merely a person in her life. He was a standard, a benchmark, a measure of what she overlooked. Most men fail to understand this. They see absence as void. They mistake withdrawal for punishment. They chase, they explain, they beg. They attempt to fill the emptiness with words and actions that scream insecurity. Psychology, however, does not respond to noise. Human minds, especially female minds when they valued you at your best, respond to contrast, to calm, to unshakable presence. Your absence is a mirror. And in that mirror, she sees her choices reflected. She senses the gap between the man she had and the man who exists beyond her control. Every mental echo, every replayed memory sharpens her perception of loss, desire, and respect unearned. Let her see you in your natural state, grounded, composed, untouchable. Do not chase, do not explain, do not justify. Simply exist as the man she underestimated, the man whose absence she cannot ignore. In this quiet space, her mind begins a reckoning. The stronger your calm, the deeper the reflection. She reconstructs memories like a sculptor chiseling stone, refining moments she dismissed, reshaping the past to highlight what she lost. Every interaction becomes a lesson she cannot erase. Every quiet moment of your composure, a testament to value she failed to recognize. Contrast is the subtle engine. Average men create chaos, noise, and desperation. You create calm, boundaries, and invisible authority. Her mind subconsciously measures you against every other man she encounters. Every glance toward another is filtered through the standard you embody. And that standard, it was never announced. It was never demanded. It was simply lived. And living it is more powerful than any explanation, any plea, any effort to reclaim attention. By the time regret begins to form, she is already midway through an internal reckoning. She notices your calm, your independence, your mastery of self. She notices not just who you are, but what she allowed herself to lose. She cannot articulate it fully. It is subtle, invisible, undeniable. And the more composed you remain, the deeper her introspection grows. Curiosity begins to sharpen into longing. Respect quietly solidifies. Regret takes root, unseen yet inescapable. Observe her mind at work. She reconstructs every shared moment, every smile, every laugh, every glance. Each memory gains clarity and weight. Each moment she dismissed now defines the cost of her choices. She doesn't need to act. She doesn't need to confess. The mind works independently, drawing conclusions, measuring value, assessing what was lost. This is the psychological architecture behind regret: absence, composure, and self-possession. You trigger it effortlessly by being yourself, not by chasing, not by pleading, not by proving, but by existing in mastery. Noise is the enemy. Most men believe attention is currency. They chase, they explain, they argue, they flood the mind with effort. You know better. True influence is silent. It is invisible. It is the quiet authority that forces reflection without action. Every boundary you hold, every step you take back, every moment of composure strengthens the architecture of her regret. She begins to measure you against all she has encountered. She finds the rest lacking. And in that comparative void, your absence becomes the most powerful presence of all. You see, she does not regret leaving because she is coerced, manipulated, or forced. She regrets leaving because your absence highlights what she undervalued. The calm, composed man triggers reflection, curiosity, and assessment. She begins to recognize the depth of what she lost, often without naming it. And that recognition is the first step in the psychological journey of regret, a journey that unfolds entirely within her mind and over which you have silent, unwavering influence. Remember, the stronger your presence in absence, the deeper her recalibration. The more you remain composed, unshaken, and steady, the more she confronts the cost of her choices. She may never voice it. She may never act on it. But she will feel it, deeply, indelibly, inevitably. And that feeling, that quiet, undeniable internal reckoning, is far more powerful than any words, any explanations, or any effort to demand acknowledgement. It is natural, it is psychological, it is unstoppable. And it begins the moment you choose mastery over noise, composure over chaos, and presence over neediness. Now her mind begins to replay the moments she once dismissed, but in a new light. She is not merely remembering. You must understand this distinction. She is reconstructing. The brain cannot tolerate absence without evaluation. Every interaction is reanalyzed. Every laughter, every glance, every pause you held is scored against an unconscious template of value. She begins to notice the gaps, the men she prioritized over you, the choices she made that no longer serve her emotional economy. This is not a fleeting sensation. It is a cognitive recalibration that unfolds silently, persistently, and with growing intensity. Observe closely. She measures without awareness. Her attention narrows like a lens adjusting to reveal detail previously ignored. The smiles she offered you without thought, the casual dismissals, the moments she believed you would wait, these now crystallize into patterns. Each past slight or misjudgment is amplified in her mind's architecture, and every act of composure on your part becomes a vector for introspection. Her dopamine circuits, which respond not to force but to contrast, reward, and unpredictability, are now subtly activated. The calm, unwavering presence you maintained is no longer ordinary. It is a benchmark against which she evaluates every new encounter. She begins to ask herself questions she cannot fully articulate. Why does he remain unaffected? Why do I feel restless thinking of him? Why is it that the men around me seem less significant? Her attention, once scattered, is now focused, deliberate, and self-reinforcing. Curiosity merges with reflection, respect intertwines with subtle longing. And this is crucial. Regret is not born of guilt alone. It emerges from a sophisticated interplay between desire, loss, and the recognition of value. It is the emotional consequence of observing composure in absence, while juxtaposing it against her own choices. Most men fail to grasp this because they believe that influence is verbal or visible. They imagine that attention must be commanded, that affection must be earned through noise. They misinterpret her silence as indifference or freedom. But the female mind operates differently. She senses structure, authority, and emotional consistency without needing it spelled out. Your absence is a framework in which her cognition organizes itself. Your calmness is the gravitational pull around which her thoughts rotate, and the more disciplined your behavior, the more precise her recalibration. Every boundary you hold is a signal. Every step back an instruction she cannot ignore. Notice the temporal effect. Her recalibration is not instantaneous. It builds incrementally, moment by moment, as she unconsciously inventories the value of your presence versus the cost of your absence. Each memory that surfaces is filtered through the lens of loss. Each thought is juxtaposed against her current choices. She may engage in normal daily routines, yet beneath the surface, a silent evaluation is underway. She measures her regrets, reweighs her decisions, and reorganizes the emotional map of her life. Your composure is the silent catalyst for this internal auditing process. And this is where men who understand female psychology gain a profound edge. They see that regret is never manufactured. It is naturally elicited through calibrated presence and absence. You do not chase, you do not explain, you do not manipulate. You exist as a constant standard of composure and self-possession. And in witnessing this, she experiences cognitive dissonance. Her previous assumptions, her freedom to dismiss, her autonomy to prioritize differently, are now being evaluated against a living measure of value she cannot contest. Her attention, once casual, becomes deliberate, and her mind constructs scenarios, projections, and comparisons. These internal cognitive loops are subtle but powerful. She may try to distract herself, to rationalize her past choices, to assert that she does not care. Yet the architecture of her thought betrays her. The more she sees that you remain unaffected, engaged in life, grounded in your own priorities, the more her mental loops converge toward the recognition of loss. Each encounter with your memory, each imagined interaction, triggers reward pathways in her brain, paired with the pain of absence. Curiosity is heightened, desire is sharpened, and respect grows simultaneously. These loops are self-reinforcing. She does not need instruction, argument, or pressure to feel them. They arise organically, naturally, inevitably. Your mastery lies in understanding this. You do not interrupt her recalibration with overt signals or demands. You do not attempt to control her perception. You simply embody consistency, presence, and composure. Each day she reflects, your influence compounds. The male mind might be satisfied with simple attention metrics, but the male who comprehends female psychology sees the depth of this recalibration. The reward is invisible, internal, and far more potent than any superficial acknowledgement. It is a subtle shaping of perception that she cannot consciously resist. Observe how her attention pivots. She notices qualities in other men that resemble you, only to find them lacking. She contrasts behaviors, gestures, confidence, and emotional steadiness. She may interact socially, but every comparison loops back to your standard. She reconsiders her past judgments. She recalibrates her emotional expectations. And in this psychological crucible, regret forms quietly. It is not overt. It does not announce itself. It is a private internal acknowledgement of absence, value, and loss. The key to sustaining this effect is unbroken composure. Any deviation, panic, pleading, justification interrupts the loops, and diminishes the natural psychological trajectory. But maintained mastery, repeated silently day after day, compounds the effect. She may never articulate it, she may never confront it, yet her mind has begun a systematic, internal recalibration that elevates your perceived value while highlighting the cost of your absence. This is the invisible architecture of regret, and it is stronger, more enduring, and more compelling than any attempt at direct influence. The final, subtle force at work in this stage is projection. She begins to project onto you the qualities she unconsciously desires to possess or attain. She imagines your life, your calm, your emotional control, and contrasts it against her own decisions. Desire, respect, and regret intermingle. Cognitive loops, reward pathways, and reflective evaluation converge. And in this convergence, she is compelled to reassess not only you, but her own behavior, priorities, and choices. She is learning, without guidance, without instruction, without coercion, the true cost of losing a man who embodies mastery over self, presence, and attention. Now the process reaches its peak. The quiet recalibration within her mind is no longer subtle, it has taken shape. She has reconstructed interactions, reweighed memories, and projected the absence of your presence against every man she encounters. Each thought of you triggers a complex cocktail of curiosity, longing, respect, and regret. And here lies the profound truth. This is not reactionary emotion. It is the product of psychological architecture that you set in motion by being steady, composed, and unattainable. Observe how her perception has shifted. What she once dismissed as ordinary, the laughter, the patience, the unwavering calm, now defines a standard. The contrast between your presence and absence has sharpened every detail. She notices the men around her are different, less certain, less grounded, less substantial. Every encounter, every glance, every conversation loops back in her mind to you. And in this looping, her respect grows. Her evaluation becomes precise. Her internal narrative begins to place you at the apex of emotional and psychological value, not through words or force, but through the unbroken consistency of your mastery. This is where most men fail. They mistake action for influence, noise for presence. They scramble to elicit responses, hoping to reclaim attention, but influence of this caliber is not sought, it is observed. The silent, composed man creates a cognitive ripple that propagates through her mind over time. Her attention, once casual, is now deliberate. Her reflections are systematic, her longing is structured, and regret forms organically, imperceptibly, inevitably. She may attempt to rationalize her feelings. She may tell herself she is unaffected, that she is free, that her choices were conscious and justified. Yet beneath the surface, a recalibration persists. The standard you embody is embedded in her perception. Every decision she makes unconsciously compares against it. Every interaction she has is filtered through the architecture of your presence and absence. And here is the subtle power. She cannot escape it because it was never imposed. It was silently demonstrated, consistently embodied, naturally reinforced. Your mastery in absence is not mere patience. It is strategic constancy. Every boundary you maintain, every step you take back, every day you live fully in your own priorities compounds the psychological effect. She notices it, internalizes it, and begins to reassess her own behaviors. Regret does not arrive as sudden revelation. It is an internalized truth, a recalibrated valuation of her choices, a cognitive acknowledgement of the cost of what she lost. And in this internalization, she learns the depth of your value, not because you told her, but because she measured it against the life she is living without you. For the male observer, the lesson is profound. Influence over perception does not require noise, chasing, or dramatics. It requires composure, self-possession, and consistent boundaries. When executed with precision, these qualities induce a cascade of internal reflection in her mind. Her attention, respect, and emotional response are naturally drawn toward the standard you set. The psychological effect is far-reaching. Curiosity, longing, and regret converge into a single, silent recognition of what was lost. And here comes the final dimension: projection. In her unconscious mind, she begins to project onto you qualities she admires, desires, or wishes she could embody. Your calm, your independence, your self-control. These become benchmarks not only of your presence, but of her own internal aspirations. Desire, respect, and regret intertwine in a feedback loop that she cannot consciously dismantle. Each internal reflection reinforces the other, creating a cumulative effect of admiration, longing, and acknowledgement that is deeply ingrained and enduring. This is the culmination of the psychological journey. Your role is simple yet profound. Exist fully in your mastery. Do not chase, do not explain, do not demand recognition. Allow her mind to navigate its own reflection. The more composed, consistent, and autonomous you are, the stronger the cognitive loops become. Absence coupled with presence is the engine. Your behavior is the blueprint. And through this, regret is born organically, silently, and powerfully. Finally, consider the echo. She may never speak it. She may never act upon it. She may never attempt to reverse her decision. Yet the psychological imprint remains. Your calm authority, your self-possession, and your absence have altered the structure of her perception. Every memory is recalibrated, every comparison weighted, every new interaction filtered through the lens you provided. She is changed, whether consciously or not. And the man who understands this principle, who embodies it without interference, knows this truth. Influence, value, and respect are cultivated silently, earned invisibly, and recognized internally. The final mastery is understanding that your behavior is the silent teacher. Every boundary, every moment of composed withdrawal, every unshakable presence demonstrates a principle she cannot ignore. That what she lost is not merely a man, but a standard, a measure, and a reality she underestimated. Regret, therefore, is not a byproduct of your manipulation. It is the natural consequence of your mastery. It is permanent, invisible, undeniable, and profound. And in this understanding, the male viewer achieves the same insight. Influence is silent, respect is measured, and the consequences of mastery ripple far beyond words, texts, or overt gestures. Remember this: the regret she feels is not superficial, temporary, or externally validated. It is psychological, deep-rooted, and anchored in perception itself. And the man who embodies calm, composure, and self-possession knows that this is not an act, a trick, or a manipulation. It is mastery, the kind that cannot be ignored, erased, or diminished. Presence in absence, consistency in behavior, and unwavering self-mastery are the forces that create it. And when applied correctly, they set the man far above ordinary influence, leaving a permanent imprint that endures long after interactions have ceased.